Welcome back to Fixing My Faith. My name is Vern, and today we will be covering something evil. And this is new information. This has just come out. Jehovah's Witness shunning something evil. Now, if you have ever been disfellowshipped, or if you were a Jehovah's Witness, if you are disfellowshipped, maybe you're currently disfellowshipped, perhaps like myself, you're just speaking out, so you're what they consider an apostate, something actually worse than being disfellowshipped. So there's different levels of shunning within the Jehovah's Witness organization. Currently, like for myself, I have family members who have left the organization, but they hang around the fringe edges of it, and they have family in, and they enjoy the association, but they don't go to the meetings, and they're not disfellowshipped, they just faded away. Those individuals will not talk to an apostate, because if they talk to an apostate, they could ruin everything they have in their current life. It changes it. And this is why we're talking about this subject, shunning. It is something evil, and if you've experienced it, well, then you know what it does to you. Now, we look at the picture here, and it's a picture of a power line with cut wires. And it's a good illustration. It's not my illustration, but it's a good illustration of what happens when you're a Jehovah's Witness and you get disfellowshipped. Everything gets cut. It's like all your wires, your lifelines get cut. So if you've ever been in a situation where you're without power because the lines are cut, well, it's, you can put up with it for a while, but after a while, you start to wonder. And if that happened forever, well, it could send you into a deep depression. And that's what we're going to talk about, what happens when people are shunned. And we're going to go right to the article here. And something evil. Now, this is new information. It's put out by RNZ, and we're going to look at a little 5-minute video after we cover the information. Now, content warning, this story discusses severe mental distress, depression, and suicide. So that's a little bit of a warning before we get into this article. Okay, we're going to dive right into it, and here we go. It opens by saying, I had the reputation of being a very studious, level-headed, discerning sister in the congregation. And then literally overnight I went to being something evil, something dirty, something to be afraid of. For Rachel Jackson, it's all over in 2 weeks. After 22 years in the Jehovah's Witnesses, she feels her whole identity disintegrated within the fortnight of confessing to doubts about the religion. Why? She had asked. Is it only us who will survive Armageddon? There are so many other good people. Why not them too? She started questioning the religion's governing body, who are deemed the mouthpiece of God. I got reported by someone in the congregation, Jackson says. I said something to her, and then she got very upset with me and reported me to the elders in the congregation. 2 elders tried to change her mind to no avail. They told her to resign or to be kicked out. Disfellowship, she says. But Jackson, who had converted from Catholicism, refused. A committee of elders was formed to decide what to do with her. I met with 3 elders, and they accused me of apostasy because I didn't accept the governing body was the men that Jehovah was using. She says she was told her disfellowshipping would be announced to the congregation in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks later, all my friendships of previous 25 years went up in smoke. No one was told why Jackson was disfellowshipped, but they all shunned her. In the Jehovah's Witness faith, anyone who leaves or is expelled from the church cannot be spoken with again. They're cast out to carry on life without the meaningful support of anyone who remains a witness. There are 8.7 million followers worldwide, including 20,000 in Eritrea. I don't know if I said that right. Many who have left, like Jackson, say the very threat of shunning causes serious long-term harm. In the practice, they say, is a breach of human rights. All of the 19 former or current Jehovah's Witnesses spoken to for this story want shunning to end, either by the religious softening its stance or by the government recognizing its harmful impact and stepping in. When you are disfellowshipped, your voice is taken away, says Jackson. You are silenced and you can't defend yourself to the people you love because you are shunned. It feels extremely cruel and unjust, and it threatens your whole identity. I had the reputation of being a very studious, level-headed, discerning sister in the congregation, and then just literally overnight, I went from being that person to being something evil, something dirty, and something to be afraid of. And that's the same situation that I'm in. Like this resonates with so many of us out there, so many of us. She goes on to say, if I saw someone I knew from the congregation, like at the supermarket, they would look away from me, and I could almost see the fear, like I was something dangerous to them. Jackson feels immense frustration that her friends will not know why she's left. I remember asking myself, who am I? And what are my values? What do I even like? Because my whole identity was tied up with being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. A young woman stares at the voice message from her disfellowship mother playing on her phone. Elsa, please pick. I miss you so much, the mother pleads. She puts the phone down and walks away. But while later looking at the photos of her mother, she asks herself, what's the harm in just calling her once in a while to chat? Maybe I can even help her come back to Jehovah. The same woman is later sitting at the Kingdom Hall meeting where she's told Jehovah will reward her with a new spiritual mother if she is patient. The scenes are from 2 official Jehovah's Witness videos that were, until recently, on its global website, showing exactly how disfellowship followers should be shunned. In June, the videos were deleted only a few days after they were put up. But the religion's followers are left in no doubt how to act towards those who leave the faith. The organization's official website hosts several other videos and even explicit instructions on how to shun close relatives. And there's a link here, and I'm going to put a link to this article in the video, so if you want to go into this and look, you can. So she goes on, the article goes on to say, in online tutorials, the magazines that followers are expected to study several times a week, shunning is called a loving provision. And these are the Watchtower studies that they have. And we covered that in some of our other videos. Now, as the Bible tells followers to remove unrepentant sinners from their midst, and this is what the Jehovah's Witnesses believe. So the religion founded in the United States in the late 19th century is heavily based on literature translation of the Bible they call the New World Translation, which predicts the end of the world. And only those who belong to what they call the truth will survive Armageddon and live in a paradise. Exact dates for the world when the world's going to end are no longer given, as Armageddon has been wrongly predicted at least 5 times since 1914. But believers are frequently reminded in study material and sermons that they are living in the last days of the last days and that the end is imminent. Now, much of the materials that come from the religious global headquarters in Warwick, New York, were the governing body of the 9 men who are said to be appointed by Holy Spirit to communicate with the followers. They set the organization's policies and practices. It has been highly organized. It's a highly organized global structure, with each congregation reporting to the circuit overseer, a bit like a traveling minister who oversees several congregations, who reports to the local branch office. All New Zealand congregations report to the Australia-Asian branch office based in the suburban of Sydney. There are only 2 reasons a believer is shunned. The first is when a baptized member is disfellowshipped, or secondly, when they are disassociated. Disfellowshipping is when a member is excommunicated and expelled, usually as a punishment for committing a serious sin. A person who leaves by choice, usually by sending in a letter quitting the religion, is said to disassociate themselves. And that's what I did. I actually sent my letter to the Bethel in Canada, and then they sent two brothers from the local congregation out to see me, and we had a very short discussion. But anyways, Bethel will never reply back to you, just so you know. The article goes on to say, whatever their method of leaving, the punishment remains the same. An announcement is made at the congregation meeting that a person is no longer a witness. They are never told why, and no one is allowed to speak to them ever again. Anyone who doesn't follow the rules faces being cast out themselves. The rules, officially at least, are slightly different for disfellowship relatives living in the same household as believers. And the Jehovah's Witnesses say only religious ties are severed with disfellowship family members, but there is no change in the family relationship. Former witnesses say that there's rare exception rather than the norm, and question why is if disfellowship family members are allowed to remain in the home. Is there, and there's a video link here on the religion's own website showing a father throwing his disfellowship daughter out of the home. So this is right. You can go to the videos, and there's video links here if you want to do some more in-depth look, and this will link you right into the Jehovah's Witness site. And these videos teach the members how to shun, and it shows a picture of the video right here. So at 20, Brad Miller experienced the real-life version of that video on the Jehovah's Witness website when he was brought before a judicial committee for having premarital sex. The committee asked me very detailed questions, Miller says. Like they wanted to know every intimate detail of what I had done. It was awful. He quickly married his girlfriend to spare her the ordeal he went through. And the elders had to ask my permission to speak to my wife at that meeting. I let them speak briefly to her, but I made sure to field all of the detailed questions so I could spare her from the worst of the questioning. And I used their system against them. So yes, so if your mate is disfellowshipped and you're a man, you get to sit in and you get to field everything. You can stop them in their tracks. I've done that. So I know all about it. So he goes on to say, after he was disfellowshipped, Miller says his father told him he could only stay with his family if he was trying to return to Jehovah. So basically the kid was kicked out unless if he didn't want to stay in the religion. So he told me that if I wasn't trying to come back to the religion, I wasn't allowed to stay. So there's a picture of Miller. Miller and his new wife found a flat of their own, and he was eventually reinstated into the church. But the seeds of doubt about his religion were starting to grow. He tried to ignore the doubts because as a third-generation witness, he knew leaving would mean losing everything and everyone, and he'd be shunned. It was terrifying, Miller says. I knew once I made the jump to actually leave, I was going to lose every support person I had in my life. When you are raised as a witness, you're not allowed to have friends outside of the witnesses. You're not allowed to do anything socially that is not witness-related. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? When one of his best friends left the religion, he saw how they were viewed by the congregation. They convinced me that he was this evil person, that he had decided to choose Satan over God. As I got older, I saw more people eventually fade away and leave. The same thing happened. They strip your identity once you are gone. You are not human anymore. You are this evil thing. And when he finally left a few months later, his worst fears were released. He begged his wife to come with him, but she refused. His wife, friends, family, and eventually even his parents refused to have any kind of contact with him. 2 years on, Miller is still reeling from the deep grief and loneliness of being shunned and suffers from anxiety and depression as he tries to forge a new life in a strange new world. It feels like everyone that I've ever known all died on the same day. Miller's cousin, Casey Dean, knows exactly what he's going through. The pair grew up together in a rural Waikato, I probably said that wrong, often attending Kingdom Halls meetings together and preaching on doorsteps around the Telkuti and Otorongo each Saturday. My New Zealand English Canadian is not that good, so bear with me. But at the age 17, Dean left his home and stopped going to meetings to escape a toxic home life. Although she didn't officially quit the religion for a few years, her parents shunned her all the same. Her mother told her she could no longer associate with her because of what she had done. What Mom was referring to was having sex with my non-witness boyfriend. This is something I should have felt guilty for, but never did. A decade on, the impact of losing her family is still keenly felt. Having a whole family is everything that I've ever wanted, like a hug from my mom, a hug from my dad. That's what I think about every single day. It chews you up inside. It's like living grief. So there's a podcast you can listen to right here. There's a link, detailed podcast. The article goes on to say, holding the threat of shunning over people's heads is enormously controlling, says American psychologist Marlene Winnell, who grew up as a fundamentalist Christian and now helps people who have left high control religions. It keeps people in the religion, and people stay in much longer than they necessarily would. Sometimes people stay and pretend to participate because they can't tolerate the idea. So, the threat of shunning, that's how powerful it is. So the threat is so powerful, there's even a commonly used term that witnesses who want to leave but don't. And they use it to describe their situation. They call it PIMO. It means physically in, mentally out, and refers to those who remain in the faith and pretend to believe so as not to lose their families. That's how Naomi describes herself. Excuse me. She's currently a member of the North Island congregation, and her real name and congregation is withheld in order to protect her safety and well-being. Naomi says she wants to leave but doesn't want to be shunned. She hasn't been to a meeting in months and is now getting phone calls, multiple texts each day, and visits from fellow congregation members wanting to check up on her. I know they're coming from a loving place, and they say they are worried about me or they're thinking about me and they don't want me to leave Jehovah. See, Jehovah means watchtower, guys. So they don't want her to leave the watchtower. But they use the word Jehovah. So it goes on to say, but I can see why people do put in the letter in to disassociate, because I'm being harassed and it's stressful. I just want them to leave me alone. Naomi doesn't want to officially disassociate herself from the religion because she doesn't want to lose her family. She also knows how harmful shunning can be, and she believes her 19-year-old brother killed himself because he was so worried about being disfellowshipped. He committed suicide a few days before he was due to appear, before a judicial committee of elders for drinking too much alcohol and watching horror movies. Could you imagine? He was scared about the repercussions and getting into trouble. And Mom and Dad were very staunch Jehovah's Witnesses growing up. You basically had to be dead to miss a meeting. He was smoking cigarettes by that stage, which was a huge no-no, and the elders did not know. So my brother would have been absolutely shitting himself about the judicial committee he was facing. Danny D. Heck knows that feeling. At 23, he was disfellowshipped for having premarital sex. And desperate to be reinstated, he would sit in the back of the Kingdom Hall in Christchurch, sobbing. I spent 4 months going to the Kingdom Hall 3 times a week. I used to sit at the back, bawling my eyes out every single meeting because I was so mortified at what I'd lost, he says. Shunned, no one in the congregation would speak to him. After 4 months, he was reinstated, only to be disfellowshipped again a year later for having more premarital sex. And again, he spent months trying to get back in. Why? Because I lost everything and the loneliness. What they bargain with is your family and friends, De Heck says. His mother refused to communicate with him while he was disfellowshipped, and he lost his business because his business partner was also a witness. I also lost everyone I grew up with because we were told never to go to sports, never to join clubs, never to have anything to do with the world. At 25, De Heck eventually stopped trying to return to the organization. 30 years later, he still has no contact with his mother and says he's had suicidal thoughts and suffered from extreme loneliness as a result of his disfellowshipping. My mom's last words as I walked out of the door was, "I love Jehovah more than you." So the mom says she loves Watchtower more than she loves her kids. That's what that means. A small study of former Jehovah's Witnesses published in Pastoral Psychology Journal earlier this year suggests shunning has a long-term detrimental effect on mental health, job possibilities, and life satisfaction. The study cites several cases of people driven to suicide after being shunned. Asked to comment on the study, the Jehovah's Witness Australasia branch says it's not aware of any evidence, empirical or otherwise, supporting claims that disfellowshipping or shunning can lead to suicide. Yeah, Watchtower takes this, no, not our religion, not our practice could ever lead to this. But this is where, folks, I think it's all changing. We'll carry on with the article. Goes on to say, we categorically reject the suggestion in the Bible-based practice of disfellowshipping causes individuals to commit suicide. Spokesman Tom whatever says in a statement from the Watchtower. He says ex-members known as apostates are not reliable sources of information, and quotes Centers for Studies on New Religions. And he uses Massimo Intravine. Now, if you don't know who this guy is, he's a supporter of cults all over the world. He's supporting devil cults. These guys have been into ghost huntings. He's actually chairman on the Dracula Society, whether that's bad or not. But he writes on his Bitter Winter website. And by the way, this guy's on the Jehovah's website. They have a video of him. They've been using his papers to try to fight the Netherlands. And this guy fights for cults all over the world. It's really interesting. I have done some articles on him, or some videos. Now, this guy who writes on his website, Bitter Winter, that the media and courts would do well to keep in mind that apostates are not representative of a larger universe of ex-members of the new religious movement. So, I think that's changing right now. We have the Be Free happening in the U.S. We're meeting at the White House, and we're all grouping together as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's all in all of our videos. If this is your first time on, check out some of the links. Now, it goes on to say, accepting that what apostates report is truth about the new religious movement would be similar to assessing the moral character of a divorced person based on the testimony of an angry ex-spouse, or basing the perception of what the Catholic Church is all about on the sole testimony of disgruntled ex-priests, Intravini writes. And this is how this Intravini, Massimo, this cult leader, cult supporter, that's how he talks. And that's, of course, how he's going to talk. Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult, and they're labeled as one of the number 3 cults. Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Scientologist, top 3. Now, the JW spokesman says strongly object to any suggestions that the practice of disfellowshipping is harmful. American mental health counselor and cult expert Stephen Hassan disagrees. He believes shunning, coupled with the religion's rigid rules about how to behave, dress, and who to associate with, are all hallmarks of a cult. He believes the religion fits into the worst part of his BITE model of authoritarian control. BITE stands for Behavior, Information, Thought, and Information Control, and the model is used to analyze how controlling a group or an organization is. According to this continuum, healthy organizations at one end allow free thinking encourage authenticity and hold leaders to account. At the other end, unhealthy organizations create dependency, obedience, and its leaders have absolute authority. And that's the watchtower. The consequence of living under such authoritarian control is that followers comply with shunning, even though it has devastating impacts, says Hassan. It's what mental health professionals call a dissociative disorder. You're so cut off from your own thoughts, feelings, your conscience, and you are doing what the group says is the right way to think and feel and act. Now, Victoria University of Wellington Religious Studies lecturer Sarah Romania doesn't agree with the word cult, that the word cult applies to Jehovah's Witnesses, but says there is no doubt shunning can be an extremely painful process for followers to leave the religion, regardless of whether they are expelled or leave by choice. Now, you can experience grief, you can experience loneliness, guilt, despair, all sorts of these emotions. Romania, who studies people's experiences of leaving religions, says the practice is about placing the blame and emotional burden on the person who is leaving. Now, shunning is a way to control the narrative, Romani says. So, for example, they would say this person left because they're wicked, and they left because they're sinners. And we've seen that even in court. They say that on my last video. So it's quite a strategic, manipulative attempt at creating this hard insider-outsider boundary. You're either in or you're out. It is also meant to send a message to existing members and prevent the spread of controversial behaviors. The fear of being shunned also plays on a human's basic instincts not to be cast out of the group, says Marlene Winnell. She describes the practice as massively cruel. We want to be accepted and loved by our parents, by our family. Just think about this in an evolutionary kind of way. We're all tribal people. The idea of being isolated, the idea of being alone, kicked out of the cave, kicked out of the tribe, is the most frightening thing. She coined the term religious trauma syndrome, RTS, in the 1990s to describe the emotional and physical damage from a high control religion, like the Jehovah's Witness can inflict. And while not an official diagnosis in the psychiatric handbook known as DSM-5, she says the symptoms of RTS are similar to that of post-traumatic stress disorder. Religion can really define who you are, and then it's like the rug is ripped out from under you. People feel quite lost, says Winnell. A little girl sits on the couch between her parents, leafing through a photo album. I have a question, she asks her father. How do you get baptized? It's the latest episode of the Jehovah's Witness cartoon series for children, Caleb and Sophie. You can be young like your mother, Sophie's father explains. What matters is that you love Jehovah or love the Watchtower. The episode provokes outrage from former Jehovah's Witnesses online. They say the pressure to get baptized, which makes a child an official member of the religion and subjects them to disfellowshipping and shunning, is immoral and starts too young. And I agree. Casey and Dean and Brad Miller agree. Dean regrets succumbing to the pressure and getting baptized at the age of 13. I definitely had my doubts, but it was the only thing that would make my parents proud of me, Dean says. It's just so much pressure on the kids. Now I'm punished for making that decision when I was 13, trying to make them happy. Now I'm disfellowshipped. I have no relationship with my parents because of this decision that I have made, this contract that I signed. Dean believes children under the age of 18 should not be allowed to get baptized. And they shouldn't be using kids in the field ministry. Like kids, they call them publishers. They're not ministers. It's my 2 bits. Miller, who was baptized at the age 10, agrees. I think it's dangerous actually getting kids that young to make a commitment like that because they can't understand the consequences. He says the fear of the imminent Armageddon is used by the faith to stop people from leaving and push people to get baptized. Because they believe only the baptized will survive and go to the paradise. This is the reason why young children are being encouraged to get baptized so they'll survive Armageddon. And Miller knows, however, that an age limit for baptism is unlikely to ever be adopted by a watchtower or imposed on it. Juliet Watts, a senior law lecturer at this Waikato University, agrees. And she says, this law expert, Watts, she says, who specializes in religion and law, says the issue rests on the competency of a child to make a decision rationally. And case laws show there is no set age for such a test. So the lawyer says. Some 10-year-old children are perfectly competent to understand the ins and outs of what is required of them or what will occur to them, whereas some 16-year-olds are not, Watts says. And there have been a number of instances to do with the parental order, with parents wishing to stop children from joining a particular faith or being baptized. And the courts in New Zealand have found that the child competent and said, we can't stop your child from undertaking this particular desire. The church's spokesman, I'm not going to say his name, that's the Watchtower spokesman, says followers are baptized when they are old enough to comprehend what the Bible teaches. That is why Jehovah's Witnesses do not baptize infants as many religions do, he says. He says, we strongly object to the suggestion that anyone, including minors, is pressured or coerced into getting baptized. We believe that those who worship God must do so willingly, from the heart, otherwise such worship is invalid. And this is true of children whose parents are Jehovah's Witness parents. Now, I call BS on that because it was going around, the elders started this with their kids. They would give their kids a car, let them get their driver's license when they got baptized, because that showed responsibility. So it was blackmail. And the parents, at least here in Canada, were blackmailing the children to get baptized by getting their driver's license and possibly getting a car, more freedom. So it's the other side of the story. That's why you guys watch this show. As they grow, they must make personal decisions whether or not to learn, accept, apply. This is what the Watchtower says. So you see, as we go through these little sections, it gets to another story. So here's another story. Lisa wasn't even getting baptized, but still was shunned by her Jehovah's Witness mother when she discovered she had a boyfriend. And she treated me as if I was a baptized witness, Lisa said. She wasn't even baptized, and her mom shunned her. At 17 years old, she was kicked out of the home. 5 years on, her boyfriend is now her husband, and they live in another town. She has no contact with her mother, and she worries that her younger sister is left behind. Her younger sister she left behind will feel pressured to be baptized. There are a lot of kids in there where it's just kind of forced on them. They don't really have a choice. They've openly spoken to me and my sisters about how they would prefer not to be doing that. Lisa, too, wants to see an end to this shunning. I could never do that to my daughter. Shunning is just so unnecessary. It breaks a lot of people's hearts. It's a long article. I don't know how long this is. Holy crap. So I'm gonna it's story after story, this article. We're gonna watch the video now. There's a video up here. And if you guys want to watch the whole, read the whole thing, you can. Now we're gonna go right to the top and come down. There's a video. And I'm gonna get it set up. It's right here. So we're gonna put it on a full screen.
Imagine every friend and family member.
And I'll set this up for you.
You've ever had in your life disappearing on the same day. Imagine every friend and family member you've ever had in your life disappearing on the same day and the emotions you'd feel during that day, and you get an idea of how it feels. It was feeling a sense of abandonment, essentially. They strip your identity once you're gone. You're not human anymore. You're this evil thing.
When I was little, I felt like I missed out on a lot. I feel like I missed out on unconditional love from my family members, my parents especially. I feel like I missed out on a lot of what other normal kids would go through because of the beliefs that our families had growing up as a Jehovah's Witness.
I remember as a kid just feeling anxious and lonely for most of my childhood. I mean, there were absolutely happy memories as well, but it was definitely always overshadowed by this sense of impending doom, this feeling that I've never quite been good enough, I've always done something wrong, or, God's watching me. And same with my parents as well, the feeling that your parents don't love you as much as other parents love their kids, is you're told, if needs be, we're going to let you die for this. Like, if you need a blood transfusion, you're going to die. If you leave Jehovah, we're abandoning you. And that was the running theme through both of our childhoods.
I knew I wanted to leave when I was very young. I always had moments where I thought this isn't right. I did see people leave, but they were not people anymore. They weren't part of our lives. They had made that choice for themselves and they had done something wrong and they were bad people. I never envisioned myself to be one of those people. But yeah, I guess I ended up being one of those people. Now I do see a lot more coming out and saying what they need to say and what is actually happening in the religion.
The image that you might have of Jehovah's Witnesses is not necessarily accurate. There is horrible stuff going on behind closed doors. For the most part, the individual witness is a really nice person, is a very good person, but the organisation that they're part of is responsible for some very horrible things.
I don't think a lot of people realise what people go through when they want to leave everything they've ever known behind in a religion that is a high control group. The shunning process is one of the hardest things that I have ever gone through, losing my entire family. And I think people need to know about that. My whole support system, everything that I had ever known, I was leaving behind.
I'm speaking out so that potentially someone still inside can see this and know that what you've been told about the outside world is not true. It's not the hell that you've been promised it will be. You won't be swallowed up and spit out. There's people out here that will love you and support you.
To start a new life on your own is terrifying and exciting all at once because you're learning to raise yourself all over again and reteach your things and rewire your brain on how things actually are out in the world. And it's not some big scary place like what you're told, but it is terrifying because you are out there by yourself.
Yeah, building a life again on your own, the terror and the wonder go hand in hand. It's wonderful, you've got so many opportunities and you can do what you want, but it's also terrifying because you've got so many things coming at you all at once. Yes, it's scary and yes, it will be hard, but it is so worth it. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of, the more people that we listen to regarding this, the better it is. And I think it's, I just think it's sad when we look at this organization and we look at all the damage that shunning has caused to worldwide, and we've only looked at a few stories. So it's all coming out, folks. All over the world, this news is coming out. The CSA cover-ups are coming out. the damages from shunning, and the mental damages that this causes. And as the young lady was saying in the video, we have to come out of the organization and we have to unwire our brains and then rewire them with the new reality of what life is. Being in that organization is a complete indoctrinational programming of the mind. And every day, in every magazine, it's Satan's wicked system and Jehovah. And Jehovah really equals Watchtower. They invented that name, Jehovah. And well, actually, a Catholic monk invented it in the 1550s, but the Catholic Church did not take that name on. They realized it was an invention, and they didn't. But Jehovah's Witnesses did, so it's quite interesting. But that brings an end to our program today, folks. It's a sobering program when we think of shunning, but it is something that we do have to talk about as survivors. And the more of us that are out and the more of us that tell our stories, I think the quicker that we're going to get a healing, we're going to get action. And if you haven't already heard about it, the Be Free 2023, we've been talking on this channel a lot about it. That's coming up. And the more of us that protest and raise our voices and speak out, and this is on Halloween, so if you're PMO, you can wear a mask, you can cover your identity. So thanks again, and also if you're Canadian, don't forget about our petition in the link in the description below, where we have a petition out in Canada where we're trying to stop these organizations that shun children especially. Do not allow them to be a charity. And that's what's happening in the Netherlands. This article here was from New Zealand. And New Zealand has taken a big stand. It's all coming out. Australia did, Pennsylvania. This is news. There's so much news right now on Jehovah's Witnesses. It just blows your mind. So folks, this is the end of our program. And let's not be like the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. They are evil for putting this shunning into effect. They are evil people to do that. And we know this is not normal. So what we do, you and I, is we keep living our lives with love. And love covers over everything. So thanks for following the channel. If you haven't yet subscribe, and it'll help our channel even grow further. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.